Every new hire rewrites your company's story. The wrong choice drags momentum, but the right one exceeds expectations. We've been involved in hiring over 100 people. Give us 34 minutes to share 7 attributes we look for when hiring top talent. So, Robert, when you think about the very best people that you've hired, which personal habit or trait makes them stand out?
That's a really good question, Kabir. The people that I've hired that have performed the best are very proactive. Like, I don't need to tell them to do something. They will come to me with problems that they've discovered and opportunities that they think will add a lot of value to the organization. It's like we I come to work in the morning, they send me a message, they say, Robert, I was up late last night doing this thing, and I just really feel like it's going to make an impact. And then it does make an impact. And so that's one thing that I think really makes a difference in the best employees that I've had.
Is there a way that you found through your hiring process where you can spot this habit or this attribute for people even before they come into the payroll?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think that for me, when I'm trying to understand someone's proactivity, I look for the type of questions that they ask in an interview. Are there questions that are going to help them understand our situation and our circumstance? And if we have invited them to do something in preparation for the interview, do they just like do the bare minimum expectation, or do they kind of try to read into it and prepare something that's going to go beyond what was asked for? That's someone who's proactive, is somebody that tries to understand what we actually care about as the employer and as the organization, and then they try to take it a notch up. So for example, if we ask a candidate to, and they're getting a job, it has to do with marketing. And so we invite them to come prepared with like a creative brief. Someone who's proactive will make the creative brief, but then they'll actually go above and beyond that. And they might actually develop an example of what it would look like. So they're not just describing what the creative would be like, but then they take the initiative to say, well, I think it'd be helpful for this employer to see more than just my written description, but I'm also going to visualize it for them. I'm going to take a couple of photographs. I'm going to um, film a video example and just show that too, so that when we get the interview, they can see my vision for this marketing campaign. Another example could be if we're hiring someone that has more of a training and a development role in the organization, and we ask them to give a training on a particular topic, XYZ. Does that candidate come prepared with an actual plan, or are they winging it? Someone who's proactive, I think, will not will have some type of written material, whether that's like notes that they're reading off of, or a PowerPoint or a slide deck that they're going to present to us that shows they've thought through the key principles that they're going to be training and teaching. Um, they'll also anticipate the questions of whoever the audience is for the role play or for the training experience, so that while I'm being receiving the training, as I have a question, they've already prepared and they already know proactively what is in my mind, and they're already addressing that.
I like that because that just shows that the attribute starts right in the interview process where they come prepared and not just prepared, but go above and beyond in the interview process. Where I think the most important thing, as you mentioned, is like knowing about the company. One of the things I've also had before is when I interview a candidate and I have to explain the company again to them as if it's the first time that they're actually hearing about it. I think it just shows to the employer, the interviewer, that if the interview stage is not taken that seriously, you try to make a judgment that probably he or she will not be the best fit for the organization. So no, I totally agree with that. And same with the questions. I think some questions that candidates ask that can just be the flip between hiring someone or not hiring someone. So it was very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah. And when you mention questions like as the flip, I'm going to say something right now that could make or break the entire interview for people listening today. Or if you're the one hiring and you're listening to this, this is something that you should look for in every single candidate. And that is at the end of an interview, usually the time comes up when you say, do you have any questions for us? Or what questions do you have for us about this opportunity? And here's what not to say. You don't want to say, nope, I don't have any questions. No, that I'm good. I'm fine. That's that's the opposite of proactive. That's the opposite of taking the initiative. Here's what else you don't want to say. You don't want to say, so yeah, how much would I be paid in this role? Or what are the hours like in this position? Those are selfish questions. Those are questions that are centered on you, not on the employer or on the organization. So as a if I'm hiring someone, those two things are things that I don't want to see. It's not that I don't want to see them. Like if somebody wants to know the wage or the hours, like we can talk about that. And that I think you should ask those, but maybe wait. The first questions that you should be asking should be outward focused about the organization, trying to understand what their pain points are. Demonstrate that you care enough and you're curious enough about what you could do to help this organization that you're going to ask questions to understand the root problems they're facing, the challenges. So for an example, Kabir, if you were interviewing me for a job and you were to ask me, what questions do you have? Then I'll say, Kabir, that's a great question. I actually really loved learning on your website about this XYZ initiative that you're currently working on as a team. I wanted to know, what are the current bottlenecks for you and your team trying to accomplish that project?
I like that. I One of the things that actually is the follow up to what you just said is actually, they go to the website, they find something that is a bottleneck based on the interview, and then after that, a day or two later, I get an email saying, "I made this for you." So it's like a small infographic or a small chart that they made, or like a simple 10-step action plan that can be done to solve so and so issue. I think that just shows that they've gone above and beyond to do something for you, even if it takes not that much time to make an action plan. It just shows that, okay, I can give this person full authority um, to get something done, and they don't have to keep coming to me for questions. I know that something will be done if it's given. So yeah, I like that.
That's a really good point, Kabir. Like the you and what's interesting is they can't surprise the employer with proactivity if they never ask the question. If they never understand the problem, then it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how much time you put into that follow-up activity. If you don't know what is the top of mind for the person that's interviewing you and what they actually care about, then you're never going to be able to be proactive in a way that adds value. You're just going to be spinning your wheels. And so it's not just being proactive, but it's like being proactive toward a goal that actually matters. That's maybe another way of saying it too. Useful
Love that.
proactivity.
Mm. That actually so that leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask you. Again, in today's time where technology is moving rapidly, where speed matters a lot, on top of proactivity, what is the next attribute that you'd look for, especially in today's time?
Great question. Building off of proactivity. So once you're proactive and you're focused in on adding value, the next attribute I look for is innovation. Someone that's innovative, they don't settle for the status quo, but they're always trying to level up whatever it is that we've done, what we're doing. The someone who is kind of content with just doing whatever's been done before is not the person that I would want on my team. I would want somebody who sees the world and the opportunities that exist within our world of operation and pushes us to dream bigger, to do better, to deliver more. I I've seen time and time again in the last couple of years as we've hired people, the most impactful employees. They're proactive and they innovate. They see something that's literally never been done before, and they're like, hey, Robert, like, what if we did this? I have this idea. We have these two different products. They're not really aligned. If we could get our data lined up better, like it could make a really big difference. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's a great idea. You should do that. Or I have this idea that could save the time of like every single employee on the team. If we could just streamline this system, and then I think, wow, that's that's innovative, that's new, it's novel. And so innovation is something that I look for.
I like that. I've worked with Robert before, and I've worked with Robert in his teams, and I know that Robert has different people who are working on innovative solutions. So one of the things that I noticed last time when I was working with you was there were like these dashboards, Tableau dashboards, or whatever different technology that you were using, but you tracked everything, very data driven, which actually leads to the innovation that's possible only because of the data that you guys have. So, can you touch a little bit upon data and how you use data in this process?
Yeah, that is an amazing question. I'm so glad you asked it because data leads to good decision making and it leads to useful creativity. When we are looking at the data, that allows us to be um, more innovative. And I think there's a couple different types of data that you should be looking for as you're trying to be innovative. You could be looking at hard numbers like quantitative key indicators that your company's measuring. You could also be looking at like data in your mind of like associative things. So if you were reading a book at home about the value of, or if you're reading a book at home about finance and you come to work and you're a marketer and something that you read in your book about finance like triggers an innovative strategy in your marketing, like that's a power of associative thinking. So there's this data that's in your mind that you can associate. And this is the same thing that happened at Apple. When Apple originally, this was decades ago, they came out with the iPods. There was a product engineer, a product designer that looked at a lock on a locker and the like a high school locker, like the spin locks. And then they were thinking about that and then thinking about this product they were building, an iPod. And then they created a little circular like thing
Hmm.
through association. The same Apple, another way, Steve Jobs went to this calligraphy class when he was in school. He sat after he dropped out of school, he went back to school and he sat in on these calligraphy courses. And that associative thinking that he had of, oh, wow, this calligraphy, we should do this in our fonts. And so Apple became known as a provider that had really beautiful fonts. And that was something people cared about. And so innovation comes from tapping into the data within you outside of work and outside of the things that you might think are directly relevant and use that associative thinking. So you have both your directly, highly direct, data-driven opportunities where you're looking at bottlenecks in your systems and your processes, or you have this associative type of thinking. The other data that you get is more informational through informational interviews and a natural curiosity. The same way that you're curious in the interview, if you are curious once you're on the team, you're just going to, and you're asking questions all the time, people are going to be giving you gems for innovation. Like, for
Hmm.
example, this happens all the time at work. I try to walk around and I try to ask people questions like, tell me about what's going on in your area. Like what are the things that are top of mind for you right now? And people will say either really positive or really negative things, and both are good for associative thinking. I hear someone say, yeah, like this is just like the worst process I think I've ever had. Or they'll say, this
Hmm.
is this is like one of the best advertising campaigns I think I've ever ran. Like, look at this. Like, look at what we did. And then all of a sudden, like I'm able to observe, and through observing and asking questions, I'm learning about things that I didn't see just in my own workflow that I'm picking up on the other people. So if
Hmm.
if I'm just going to summarize, like how can you be innovative? I think data driven, like reviewing your key indicator metrics to recognize bottlenecks, associative thinking, like on the periphery, like things outside of your work, bring those, to you at work, and then that'll help you be creative and innovative. And then third, asking questions and informal interviews. And that could be both within the workplace or outside the workplace. Like if you have a tough challenge and you want to talk to someone on LinkedIn about it, like that's another way to be innovative. So innovation's key. And how do you find innovation in candidates like ahead of time? I um I think history is like the best performance of success. But I'm curious, actually, Kabir, what do you guys do, or how do you know if somebody's innovative before you hire them?
Yeah, a couple things actually. I like all the points that you mentioned. Um, I'd like to go back a little bit and start with the organization. If it's a smaller organization, I will have fewer people, and the people that I have, I would like to leverage them 10x with the kind of technologies that are available. So my outlook on innovation, especially after 2023, was how good are they with AI tools? Or maybe not how good, but how curious are they about these AI tools that are in the market? How adaptable and like how coachable are they? If I know certain AI tools, how well can I explain it to them so that they can 10x their productivity by using certain tools? And if they're curious about these tools, maybe they can find some tools that I don't know about, and then we can use that in our organization. So I think with the size of the organization, that also plays a role in the kind of innovative thinking that you might have. And especially with the smaller company, smaller organization, um, that is a very important thing for me when I'm hiring someone. Um, because if the person has to write the copywriting, for example, on his own, versus if the person's already trained on is trained on certain AI tools for copywriting, I know that they would probably be able to write um, 10 pieces of content with the AI tools available versus just one of them. So I look for innovation, especially with AI tools right now.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. And I know you're like an expert on AI. We'll have to do another one of these talking about AI tools
I,
sometime.
I love what's happening in the world of AI, especially with agents and using different frameworks to make the whole process way faster, where you're actually now connecting into different systems. Again, this might be a little tangent, but you can connect before. There's something called MCPs. So before we had MCPs, there was APIs that would connect into different protocols, and like you would connect to, let's say, your Google Sheets, and then when your Google Sheets is connected to, let's say, ChatGPT, anything that you do there can refer back and forth between ChatGPT. Then you have no-code solutions, integrations with AI and agents. So there's a lot of things that are there, and hiring is actually very important when all these tools are accessible to you. uh, if someone has an idea of using an agentic tool and using a no-code solution and automating a whole process, that would be a huge factor for me to hire them, as long as
Yeah,
it's a culture fit. And
I
which actually
love
brings
that.
me, yeah, which brings me actually to the next question that I wanted to ask you. That rarely do organizations work as like a one-person company, even though I think with AI that it is going to be possible where we will have the first billionaire who is just a one person organization. It might be just one billionaire a unicorn that's just one person. So my next question is, um, with these tools, a lot of the workflow might be given to a smaller size team. However, teams still play a key role in organizations. Um, is there something that you look for to see if this so and so person is going to be the right team fit?
Yes. Collaboration is the third core value that I have. When I look for an employee, I look for someone that's highly collaborative, and I'll explain what that means. Even AI is collaborative. And if you have been following the news recently, people listening to this might be thinking of Grok 4. Grok 4 is now the cutting edge AI tool There's nothing else like it. And the way that it's so smart is it actually has multiple AI agents solving the same prompt, responding to the same prompt, and coming up with the best solution together. So one AI on its own is not as good as like 4 or 5 AIs trying to solve your problem and then giving you an answer to the prompt. The exact same thing is true in real life. An individual working all alone is going to come up with myopic ideas that don't add as much value and don't consider all the um, alternatives that could arise when you're trying to solve a problem.
Mm,
And so some of the things that I look for someone who has an outward mindset, someone who is conscious and aware of the people around them. And I can feel that in an interview by the way somebody talks to me. Someone who's pretty like arrogant, smartest person in the room is not the team player that you're going to want. Someone who's focused on their own success instead of the success of the organization is not going to
mm,
be a huge team player. So that's why I mentioned when the first questions they're asking are like, how much am I going to make? What are my
mm.
hours? Me. When they're asking about themselves, that is a huge red flag. It's not the type of person that's going to be highly collaborative and invested in the mission of whatever the team is trying to do. A mission focused person is the person that's going to be the most collaborative. At least that's something that I've found.
Okay. So you've hired a person, Robert. You've found that this person is collaborative. You know that the person is innovative.
Mhm.
And you know that the person is proactive. How do you know that the job will get done?
Accountability. Like I I need to find someone who is disciplined and reliable, and the best way to do that is not just looking at the resume, although that's important, but I found calling a previous employer to be a
Mm,
huge win. So if I'm sold on all the other things, like I think, okay, this person's proactive, I think they're innovative, I think they're going to be a great collaborator, someone that's going to be a team player and proactively reach out to other team members. All these things overlap.
mm,
I know all those three things about someone, but then I don't know yet whether or not they are going to be reliable in meeting deadlines, things like that. That is something that's very hard to judge just based off of an interview. You can kind of do it like if they make sure that they submit the work assignment like in a short amount of time, or if they get everything that you asked for in the pre-interview screenings promptly. Like that's a good indication. But really the best indication is to talk to someone that's actually worked with that individual before and see what they say about their work ethic and specifically timeliness, reliability, and ability to just be prompt and responsive. Because those are things that carry like you build up the reputation over time, and so it's hard to just judge in a short time frame. Even if you spend a series of weeks evaluating candidates, you need like to know their character over a longer period of time, and that comes through just calling somebody else that knows them.
mm. I think that also ties into just the kind of work ethic and attitude that they bring to the table. Um, is there a way that you measure this, measure the reliability or accountability of the person? Is there, what would you say would be the next thing that I guess you look at, or how do you measure that?
Yeah, I think when you're calling someone to ask about their previous work experience, like a former employer, you can ask some direct questions that will make it so that you can gain specific stories,
Mm,
um, and that will help you understand within specific scenarios if they've been reliable. You could ask them in the interview too if they can share specific stories, but then once somebody's hired, um, I think you just need to make it as easy as possible for them to win and to succeed by giving them clear deadlines, clear deliverables. Make sure you, as the employer, are giving them stuff that they could turn around and hand back to you without just asking them to do ambiguous tasks all the time. That will help them be more reliable and accountable as well. So um, it's kind of a two-way street with reliability. Often I think we're quick to point the finger at the employee and say, yeah, they're just not reliable. But I need to remember, did I give them a project and clear deadlines so that they could be reliable? That's another thing that I think can help increase reliability in a candidate.
Gotcha. And then the maintenance of this reliability, like um, I think another thing that I was thinking about, as you said, about reliability is what about, let's say, burnout? Let's say the person is working on a task for like a month, and the next month the first month it was awesome, proactive, reliable, collaborative, but like let's say the next month has not been up to the standard that they've been going for. What is there something that you look for in terms of like just like long-term performance of a person?
Oh, yeah. Intrinsic motivation is key. If somebody is not intrinsically motivated to add value at your organization, then they're going to burn out faster than the others. Like if, and this kind of goes back again to that selfish versus selfless mentality. If someone's
Mm,
intrinsically motivated, they have a lot of skin in the game to solve a
mm,
problem. If their primary motivation is how much money am I going to make, how many hours am I going to have, that person will become less reliable very quickly. But if somebody is focused on how can we solve this problem for our customers, like I really genuinely care about making their life better, then they're going to stay up all night trying to fix the problem. They're going to,
mm.
if they intrinsically have the itch to solve whatever it is you're working on as a team. And so that's something you can kind of feel for. You ask questions like, what are your career goals? Long term, where do you see this? How is this opportunity with our company going to help you get to where you're trying to go? What skills are you trying to develop? What is the reason for you wanting this role and this opportunity right now? And so understanding their intrinsic motivation will help you align their work with find someone that already aligns their work with what you need.
Yeah, I like that because there's another way I would phrase the intrinsic motivation. I probably would call it something like passion or an energy that they bring. Um, um,
Yeah.
and if they do believe in the product, they actually care about the company. I care actually. I was actually going to be the next thing that I was going to ask you. But going back to passion, they actually are passionate about the projects that they are working on. And if there's something that they noticed that maybe the employer didn't notice was not right, or like something that was missed, I think they'll just go above and beyond if they're passionate about something. Versus if they didn't really care too much about it, they'd be like, it's okay. We'll figure it out
I
later.
I love what you said, Kabir, especially about energy. Like there is super real energy in the room, even on a virtual call. Like you can tell a lot from the energy that a person gives off, whether or not this is like their favorite job they're applying for, if they're excited about the role, and you want to look for someone with good energy, with good
Mm.
vibes. Um, that's not just superficial. That's like a real thing to look for, I think, in a candidate. Passion and energy vibrate. It's like, have you ever heard a good band or an a cappella group, or when an instrument's in tune and when instruments come together in tune, or like people sing together and they're in tune and they harmonize real well, there's like this vibration in the room, there's energy. Like you can feel that in an interview. If you really have that connection with a candidate, there will be an energy. And if you don't feel that, that's a valid reason to not want to hire a particular person. If you can't explain all the vibrations, but if you don't feel the good vibe and the energy from a candidate, then that's another reason why you might want to question bringing them on the team.
Good vibes. That's how I'll summarize this point. Um, we touched a little bit upon care. I think another way to describe that would be um, just a customer obsession or a focus on the outward focus or empathy. Anything that you look for these attributes when you're hiring, and this is probably going to be my last question that I'd ask you.
Caring and looking outward is the key to successful business. and product management and product design. And I think everyone in the business should think like a product manager. They should think like someone, and here's why. The product is what people care about. So if you're in
Mm,
sales, you got to understand the product. If you're in marketing, got to understand the product. If you're the product designer, got to understand it. The engineer, understand it.
mm.
And at its core, good product design starts with how, like, what are the pain points of your target audience, of the person that you're trying to help. And I think the best way to illustrate this is with social impact and like organizations that are trying to do good and to fight things like poverty, right? If you are trying to fight poverty, eliminate hunger, and combat some of these really like vexing problems in the world, then you need to see um, beyond your solution, and you need to go to the root of the person you're trying to help. And every product that we sell at in some way is adding value, like genuine value. It's solving some real problem that somebody's having in their life. And so, how do you test for that? You ask questions to the candidate about your target audience. See if they
Mm.
understand them or if they're inquisitive and want to know more about them. You can have some type of role play experience or questionnaire that allows you to see their level of understanding and empathy for a particular group of people.
Well, Robert, this has been a pleasure. I'll quickly give a summary of the points that we mentioned that we both spoke about. You mentioned at the start, proactivity is a very important attribute that you look at when you're hiring a person. You look at innovation, especially in today's time where things are moving way faster. But what is the next important thing is how do they actually work with this proactivity and innovation in a team environment? So collaboration is what you mentioned, how well they can work with their teammates. Reliability and accountability. If the work that is actually said that would, if they say that they will do something, that actually they are accountable to that. The next one was when we look at it long term, so that the person doesn't actually burn out. How well do they actually perform? And you look for those attributes through their work ethic, through their attitude. Um, Next was energy, which I'd summarize as good vibes. And then finally, and the most important thing, which you mentioned, was care and empathy, and a customer obsession. How does that sound like a wrap up, Robert?
That sounds like a good summary. Wow, you were listening to all those points. And I just want to promise the people on this call, on this, not a call, but on this, listening to this podcast, that if you look for these things in a candidate, you will see the night and day difference. A good employee can do remarkable things for your organization. And a bad employee, people that don't have these things, become a crutch and they actually slow you down. It's not just that they're not adding value, it's that they actually detract and they distract your focus.
Robert, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Kabir. Until next time.
Till next time. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.